Okay, so how about the world system theory? So the world system theory basically advance very similar arguments with dependency theory. The difference is that dependency theory focuses on a single society, a vulnerable society, and its relationship with an external metropole, or and this relation of dependence. Um, but the world system theory actually focus on a bigger region. Doesn't only focus on the vulnerable countries and the metropole, but also multiple other countries that are in the system with these different countries. So, for example, in the previous video that you watched, it talks about how the peripheral countries and semi-peripheral countries are all contributing to the core countries, right? So, the world system theory discussion here I drew from Wallerstein, but there are also other world system theories. So, according to Wallerstein, what is the world system? So he defines the world system as the large geographical region covering different political units with internal division of labor, trade, and exchange. And then he closely associates the modern world system with capitalism. So he says that capitalism is not characterized by trade or wage labor because this kind of thing actually existed for a long time, but by priorities given to endless accumulation of capital. So this endless accumulation of capital has to be supported by governments and regulations and trade policies, and in order to achieve a kind of quasi monopolies to maximize profit. So he advanced the concept of core versus periphery countries and products and processes. So he also has a category of semi-periphery, which basically means a mixture of core and peripheral characters. So what are core peripheral products? So according to Wallerstein, core products are products that bring high profits, and because they have some kinds of monopolies, so people will buy these products all from the few countries who monopolize it, and also can extract high profit from these products. For example, iPhones, everyone has to buy from Apple, and Apple is based in the US. And then peripheral products are low profit products, usually primary commodities like wood, timber, coffee, tea, cocoa, that kind of thing. So it is very competitive, and you can find very, very cheap commodities in the supermarket even. So, what are core peripheral states? So, the core states are places where productions of core products are concentrated. Usually, a strong state support is present to create quasi monopolies, for example, by imposing patents, import export restriction, subsidies and tax, and regulations that is detrimental to smaller businesses or our foreign businesses, to support the quasi monopolies of these core products. And peripheral states are places where production of peripheral products are concentrated. And then semi peripheral states are places where they are both core and peripheral products. So when there's trade and exchange between core countries and peripheral countries, you can see that because peripheral countries are buying very expensive and high profit products from the few core countries, they are actually giving a lot to these core countries, but core countries can buy from so many different peripheral countries, and they are only having a low profit margin. So when you look at the exchange, it was a really asymmetry and unequal exchange between core and periphery states. They are in trade relations. So Wolstein also tried to explain how is the world system maintained, and he does this by looking from the household perspective. So he explained that there are usually different economic activities within the household. So it is possible to pay very low wages to household in periphery production process, because these employees can actually gather other kind of resources from subsistence economy, or from rent or from transfer, He listed down different kinds of economic activities in the book. And he actually said that employers prefer semi-proletariat households, meaning households that do not entirely rely on wage labor, so that they don't have to give the minimal wage to sustain the employee's household. So this is possible. The world system is made possible because of this. And then he also talked about the role of socialization, particularly by states, but also especially by household. So household who became proletariat or middle class or higher class, or they have the tendency or the wish to try to maintain their class identity and status group. So in this way, they usually socialize the family members into accepting the hierarchy that's existing in the world and internalizing the hierarchy. So if you are a middle class household who sends your children to go to the United States to study and then eventually work there, you want to maintain this hierarchy in order to maintain your status group. So you accept that people are being paid much better in the United States than in Nepal or Malaysia or other developing countries. So people accepted that. Um, and then Wallerstein also talk about how universalism and anti-universalism are working together to legitimize the world system. So universalism meaning the applications of same rules and fair rules to everybody involved in the economic activities. So usually people in the middle who are not the highest class or the lowest class are the ones who advocate for universalism to ensure that there is a fair amount fair amount of chances for them to get meritocratic awards and allocation of resources, and this is also generally good for efficiency. So universalism has been used to legitimize the world system. But at the same time, this universalism actually coexists with sexism and racism because they are always people who are in the low ranking positions and who have very little opportunities to gain better wages or better lives, and they are in the bottom of the social hierarchy. And usually, sexism and racism are used to justify the positions of these people. So, what are the criticisms of the world system theory and the dependency theory? So, in the 1970s and 1980s, you can see some newly industrializing nations such as Korea and Taiwan, through policies of import substitution and export promotions, become achieve a remarkable level of development. Um, so, even though Korea and Taiwan weren't typically core countries before that, they managed to achieve the level of kind of close to core country status in during this period. Of course, they have benefited from U.S. geopolitical interests. So U.S. have been offering them very special terms of trades to Korea and Taiwan because U.S. was trying to fight communism in the Asia Pacific area, and Korea and Taiwan is kind of U.S. tools to counter communism from China. But Korea and Taiwan themselves also have very strong and centralized states that make decisions about different industrial policies that make all this possible in the first place. And then you have other rising economies in the 1990s like Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam, which developed through mixed economy. For example, Malaysia really diversified its economy by not only focusing on crude oil and timber, but also develop other kind of manufacturing industry like semiconductor, rubber. Actually, Malaysia is the biggest condo manufacturers in the world. That's an interesting fact. And then also Malaysia has some nationally owned enterprises like we have nationally owned car manufacturing enterprises, and they are proven to be able to prosperous and extract profit and help the country achieve development. So what this example show is that it is possible for nations to develop even under the world system that was being described. Um, but definitely not with the help of international organizations like the World Bank or developed nations, right? It is more or less because of the country leaders or the country's strong government that devise certain kind of policy that take advantage of the international setting. So, in a way, again, this observation has a little bit of overlapping with modernization theory by Rostow. If you remember, Rostow was talking about how countries should take advantage of nationalism and also international setting to prosper. So you can see that this country, they're actually doing the same thing. World system theory seems to be too limited by suggesting that all peripheral countries are in a forever peripheral situations that only help to enrich core countries. Even though they do mention semi-peripheral countries that try to increase their percentage of core products, and I think that's also what's happening with these newly industrializing nations who successfully transition to semi-peripheral countries and gradually towards the core countries. So, I have a question before ending our lecture here. Modernization theory, dependency theory, and world system theory give different explanation of how development occurs. So, they all talk about how development occurs. Modernization theory talks about different stages of growth and how people go through all these different stages in order to attain development. But dependency theory says that, okay, underdevelopment occurs when you have interactions with outsiders and strong metropole countries. And the world system theory explain how core countries benefits and peripheral countries lose out in the world system. So they give very different explanation of how development occur. But my question is, do you think they have the same understanding of what is development? For them, is development the same thing? And if it is, what are they? And also, the second question is, what are the similarities between modernization and dependency theory? Can you see any kind of similarities or similar understanding between modernization and dependency theory? So try to think a bit more hard about this and write down your answers, and we will discuss in the Tuesday synchronous sections. And you can also write about this in your weekly reflection if you wish to. Okay, thank you very much for listening to my lecture today. I hope you have a good weekend. Remember to take the quiz by the end of the week, and I will see you on Tuesday.